Has Virginia failed its citizens with disabilities? Sam Brock examines the question through the eyes of an Ashland family desperate for assistance and waiting for answers. Here's his special report.
You want to do this?
Yeah.
This is Sharon Strauss in her element.
Hello, Nicole.
Some of that off, 'cause I don't know.
Nicole, look.
She just about always has a smile on her face. Whether elbow deep in beads and markers, at a Randolph-Macon art class, or scrubbing the mats at American Family Fitness, where she works twice a week. Sharon's energy is infectious.
So what's the hardest part about your job?
I love it.
But sometimes in life you don't control where the chips fall.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
And all the positive thinking in the world won't change one simple
I don't
fact.
know how.
Who won?
Sharon's living situation, her friends, her job, can all be taken away in a heartbeat.
I pray every single day, and I ask God that before He take me, to take her.
In a one-story home in Ashland, Janet Strauss serves as caretaker for her sister Sharon, who lives with an intellectual disability. Sharon's one of nearly 6,000 Virginians on the waiting list for an intellectual disability waiver. It's a list that swells each year, with more parents pressing for action from their lawmakers.
I can't die. I can't die. Who's going to take care of my child? I've lived in this state without the waiver, and it's just undoable. People lose their homes, they lose their marriages, they wind up on the street.
See what I was saying?
That's a bowling medal, huh?
Yeah.
The waiver Sharon's seeking, that some 9,000 families already have, offers people with disabilities specialized care, supported employment, and other services to live in communities and not in institutions. With Janet's own health a concern, Sharon's waiver request is listed as urgent.
I don't know. It's no answer, and that's why I panic. Because without the Medicaid waiver, where would she go? What would happen to her?
The journey for families like the Strausses is still evolving. 2 hours outside of Richmond in Amherst County, Virginia, you'll find the Central Virginia Training Center, or CVTC for short. It's one of the state's 5 institutions for the disabled.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
How are you?
Director Dale Woods took us on a tour of the facility recently.
You've noticed all the various little positioning devices.
And talked about the training center's mission. First and foremost, caring for the residents.
The other part of the mission is to help people become more independent, to teach skills that people need, skills of independent living.
But our trip to CVTC and this investigation prompted 2 very important questions. Could Sharon end up at a training center like CVTC? And if she did, would it be considered independent living? The Department of Justice weighed in on the matter recently, filing a report in February based largely on findings at CVTC that says in no uncertain terms the Commonwealth, quote, fails to provide services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and stands in violation of federal law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, by failing to give Sharon and thousands of other people across the state a fair shot at adequate community services.
From the DOJ standpoint, though, you are out of compliance with the ADA.
Yeah, that's what their letter would indicate, and they believe that we are.
The buck stops with Dr. Bill Hazel, Virginia's Secretary of Health and Human Services. Hazel says Virginia has made great strides in recent years providing services for people with disabilities. While he can't predict if or when a deal will be struck with the DOJ, he adds Virginia has been negotiating in good faith and is doing the best it can.
Community care doesn't just happen. It doesn't just spring up magically. It's something that has to be created. That's a barrier in and of itself. The funding is an issue.
And an issue yet to be reckoned with. When it comes to spending towards services for people with disabilities, Virginia is a far cry from top-ranked New York or Connecticut. The Commonwealth finds itself ranked 45th in the country, with states like Texas near the bottom of the barrel. Things won't get easier for the state's lawmakers either. In tight times, a yay vote for some services inevitably means a nay vote for others. And funding aside, the secretary questions a quick fix.
You can't just throw money at problems. You also need to have a plan that makes it all work.
It's been going on for years.
Yes, it has.
Do you think that anything will change?
Hopefully, it will. Most definitely. We need a change.
And so Janet Strauss says she'll wait.
Yeah, right here.
And she'll hope that a path that starts in Sharon's own community, where people pick each other up and draw strength from their families and strive for a life like everybody else's, doesn't lead to a destination unknown. In Ashland, Sam Brock, CBS 6 News.
The General Assembly took a small step last year to strengthen services for the disabled, creating a $30 million trust fund and adding 275 Medicaid waivers. Lawmakers insist the transition to full community-based care is their goal, although thousands of additional waivers are still needed.
Last week, Sam Brock brought you the story of Sharon Strauss, an Ashland woman with intellectual disabilities. His report highlighted the obstacles Virginia faces when it comes to caring for its disabled population.
Tonight, Sam follows up with a man with severe disabilities who benefited from the state system, showing he can live in the community if given the proper resources.
Our initial story comes on the heels of a Department of Justice report that says the state has failed people with disabilities, leaving too many families on waiting lists for community care and relying on institutionalization. Well, tonight we introduce you to a man, Walter, who has severe disabilities, and he's lived in institutions for 56 years, but he is now in the community and he is thriving. It's been a year since 58-year-old Walter Clark has found a new home with this Lynchburg family, Brett and Sandy Johnson.
I'm gonna gobble almost 6 tail.
You aren't gonna get anybody's tail.
And already, he's developed much more than just a signature catchphrase.
It's great. A lot of places we go, people know him by name. We go to Walmart and he knows more people than we do.
In short order,
I'm gonna get tail.
Walter has stamped an imprint in this community.
This is Hillcat Games.
With trips to minor league baseball games, outings at the beach.
He absolutely loved it.
And regular stops at local restaurants.
They'll say, "Come on, Walter, we'll show you to your table," and they'll take us right back. And the waitresses know that he gets potato soup. You know, they definitely know, wherever we go, what Walter's getting.
It's an amazing turn of events, Johnson says, for a man who spent almost his entire life in state institutions for the disabled. Walter lived at the Central Virginia Training Center in nearby Amherst County for 30 years.
B12.
Until his legal guardian, an aide at the center, pushed for Walter to receive community-based care, and the Johnsons stepped in.
The people at the training center have done a good job. It's just here in someone's home, they're part of our family. And, we look at them as our family and go out into the community.
Going up, all right? Aye, man.
It's a narrative the Johnsons call uplifting. Proof that someone like Walter, who's blind and living with a severe intellectual disability, can get the care he needs in a home setting. As the state wrestles with how and when it will provide that care for thousands of other people, Sandy Johnson urges leaders to keep Walter's situation in mind and the gains he's already reaped in 12 months.
When we put him to bed at night, he'll actually, if you go down and hug him in his bed, he'll reach his arm around you and kind of pat you on your back and say, "I love you too." So, he's definitely changed quite a bit from when we first met him a year ago.
Walter is one of the fortunate Virginians who does have a Medicaid intellectual disability waiver, which pays for specialized care, equipment like that Skylift, and the opportunity to live in a home with the Johnsons. Sam Brock, CBS 6 News.
It's a subject that has confounded the state and thousands of affected Virginia families for years.
We're talking about how Virginia cares for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In February, the Department of Justice issued a report finding the Commonwealth in violation of federal law, putting too much emphasis on institutional care and not enough on keeping people in their community.
Our Sam Brock has been holding state officials accountable and speaking to families firsthand about what they've seen as the successes and failures of Virginia's system.
Tonight, he joins us with a new perspective. Sam?
Stephanie and Bill, last month we brought you the story of Janet and Sharon Strauss, a family desperate for services that would keep Sharon, who has an intellectual disability, living in her Ashland community and not in an institution. Tonight, a very different viewpoint told through the lens of two parents who say their son Jason needs an institution, could never have the same quality of life outside of an institution. A conflicting perspective that also paints a fuller picture of what state lawmakers are up against. Maybe it's coincidence, and maybe it's not, that Jason Kinsler's horse is named Traveler. After all, Jason has an imagination that knows no bounds, and Traveler is the vehicle that takes him where he wants to go.
Oh yeah, he's jumping up and his hands are moving, he's smiling.
Jane Anthony, Jason's mother, says the therapeutic horseback riding is just one way her son explores and connects with the world around him.
He goes to Special Olympics. He goes to Easter Seal Camp in the summer. Volunteers come every Tuesday night. Getting him out in the community makes him, really, he's truly part of the community.
And Jason's community spans the gravelly roads of Great Falls, Virginia, to the hallways of the Northern Virginia Training Center in Fairfax, where Jason has pedaled, played, and propped his head
and down again
for the better part of his 36 years.
He has Angelman syndrome. It means he's missing the teeny piece of his 15th chromosome.
Look, Jason.
Jason has the cognitive functioning of a 6-month-old child, can't speak,
11 inches,
and will readily consume inanimate objects, a condition called pica. When he was 3.5, Jason's parents admitted him to this training center, NVTC, a process Peter Kinsler, Jason's father, describes as sobering and bittersweet.
There's joy because he is who he is and he's wonderful to visit. There's pain because of who he isn't and who he will never be. Jason is different and wonderful in his own way, but not on the normal scale that I had grown up with in terms of what you expect to give to a child and to get from a child.
Accepting Jason's condition took time for both parents, who say they want nothing more than to give their son the most fulfilling life possible.
Hi, Jason, it's Mommy.
So they've chosen NVTC, an institution and a subject of increasing controversy among families with disabled loved ones and state leaders.
It's been a hardship. It's been a panic.
Recently, we interviewed Janet Strauss of Ashland, one of the thousands of Virginia family members on a waiting list for specialized services and petrified by the prospect.
Let me go get juice in my hair, okay?
Her loved one will end up in an institution.
They are humans, and they have a life just like we have. They are just confined with our disability.
I think there's a consensus today among most people it has to be done, and it's the right thing to do.
Virginia Delegate Kurt Cox, the House Majority Leader, is talking about transitioning people with disabilities like Jason from institutions into a community setting.
We're just way behind on that stuff.
Cox says it's time for Virginia to pick up the pace as the Department of Justice threatens to bring a lawsuit against the state for, quote, violating the civil rights of people with disabilities and continuing a system of unnecessary institutionalization.
When you close a facility.
But Cox explains Virginia can't just start shutting down institutions for, among other reasons, the families who still find comfort and value in institutional care.
Some of the parents, that's all they've known, so they're comfortable with that. So how do you transition those particular folks? How do you educate those particular folks? How do you do that?
To think that they can make judgments without talking to the people whose children are getting the services, receiving the services, is just makes no sense to me.
I think they need to come for a tour. I think they need to come here and see that this place is not closed off, and that just because the word congregate care is in there doesn't make it wrong.
There are 66 people that go every day off campus to work.
CBS 6 recently took the tour Jane Anthony recommended for critics, where facility director Dr. Mark Diorio explained that residents combine on-site activities like vocational training, pool therapy, walks on the nature trail, with off-campus development. The horseback riding is paid for by parents, but the state organizes a host of events, from circus and camp trips to work programs and interaction with students. that move the residents off-site and into a new environment.
There are those who have children in the community who don't feel that they want their children in a quote-unquote institution, but we don't think of it. We think of it as a community of folks like my son, and it's far from an institution.
And for parents like Peter and Jane, they say far from the life experience they'd be able to offer their son anywhere else.
The community is a great place for those who can function in it, and we need to build more community, and there's not a parent here who would not be behind that. But don't get rid of something, the part that's working in Virginia.
Traveler just put his nose in the camera.
Reporting from Fairfax County, Sam Brock, CBS 6 News.
And in a recent conversation with Dr. Bill Hazel, the man in charge of the state services for the disabled, I asked, do you think Virginia will have institutions 10 or 20 years down the road? He said yes, but they'll likely be very different, focusing on respite for families who need it, or specialized medical and dental care like they have now, even some permanent housing. But Hazel said there won't be a one-size-fits-all scenario. It's just too complicated. Back to you.